Well, today we're going way back, like way back to ancient East Africa.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
It is, it is. We're talking about a kingdom you might not have heard of called Kitara.
Kitara.
Yeah, Kitara. But get this kingdom story, it's like surprisingly relevant even today.
Really?
Yeah, it is. Our main source for this deep dive is excerpts from a book called Kitara, A Glimpse into Ancient East Africa.
Okay.
And it was written by Melody Hope.
Okay.
And it's packed with these like captivating oral histories that have been passed down like for generations.
Wow.
Powerful princesses, a mysterious and super influential cult, even connections to some present-day kingdoms. We're gonna uncover it all.
I love how these oral traditions give us this window into, a world that's so often overlooked.
Absolutely.
It's not just names and dates, but the beliefs, the social structures,
Right.
the stuff that really defined life in Kitara.
Exactly, yeah. So to kind of set the stage, Melody Hope describes Kitara as this sprawling kingdom. It spanned parts of modern-day Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and even the DRC.
Wow. That's huge.
I know. It really makes you realize just how interconnected things were even way back then.
Yeah, definitely. And something that's, central to understanding Kitara, I think, is the Cwezi.
Okay.
Now, they were a cult that practiced divination and witchcraft, but their impact, it went way beyond just that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they basically shaped the entire social hierarchy of Kitara. He created this really rigid caste system that really divided the population.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's break this down. Who were the main players in this caste system?
All right, so you had the Bahuma, who were the pastoralists, think of cattle herders, and then the Bairu, who were the agriculturalists. They were the cultivators. And the Cwezi, through their beliefs and practices, they actually helped to solidify this whole division.
So it wasn't just like about occupation, it was like an entire belief system that like reinforced this hierarchy.
Exactly. The book even describes physical differences between these two groups. And this just further fed into the Cwezi's idea that the Bahuma were inherently superior.
Wow.
It's a good reminder that, systems of power and prejudice have deep roots.
Yeah.
And the Cwezi played a key role in embedding those into Kitara's society.
Yeah, and it gets even more complex when you think about the overall context of that time, like pre-Christian East Africa, at least as it's depicted in these oral histories,
Right.
was a pretty harsh place.
Yeah, absolutely. The book, it really highlights that the whole concept of the sanctity of life was very different then.
Oh, interesting.
Justice was often arbitrary, unpredictable, and heavily influenced by, whoever was in power at the time. It was a world where survival, it really often depended on navigating this complex web of social hierarchies and, potentially dangerous power dynamics.
And then into this world walks this incredible figure, Princess Kagare.
Oh, yeah.
Now, she wasn't just royalty. She was a powerful leader. She was the chief of the Busongora County, a wizard, and the head of the Cwezi cult. Talk about shattering any preconceived notions we might have about women in ancient societies.
I mean, her story is a perfect example of why these deep dives are so valuable.
Absolutely.
Kagere belonged to the Tembuzi dynasty, the very first rulers of Kitara.
Wow.
They established their capital in Bunyoro, which is in modern-day Uganda.
Right.
But sadly, her story also kind of coincides with the beginning of the Tembuzi dynasty's downfall.
Oh, wow. So what led to their decline? Was Princess Kagere directly involved?
Well, it actually all starts during the reign of Kagere's nephew, Izarzar.
Okay.
So the dynasty starts to, weaken. And this creates the perfect opportunity for someone unexpected to kind of rise to power.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. Who steps into this power vacuum? Someone from within the dynasty or a complete outsider?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
His name was Bupuku. And get this, he wasn't royalty. He wasn't a powerful warrior. He was a gate man in Izarzar's palace.
A gate man. That's a pretty incredible rise to power. What happened? Was there like some kind of coup?
It's more a case of being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
See, Izarzar had this bitter enemy named Yami Yunga, and their rivalry eventually led to Izarzar's capture. And with him, out of the picture, Well, someone had to step up,
Yeah, yeah.
and that someone was Bukuku.
Wow. So from guarding the palace gates to potentially ruling a kingdom, you've got to wonder if his background shaped his approach to leadership at all.
That's a great point. And while Bukuku's story is fascinating on its own, it's his grandson, Ndura, who really cements this unexpected lineage into Kitara's history.
Tahura, wasn't he the one who really solidified what became known as the Cwezi Empire?
You got it. But his rise to power was, well, anything but peaceful. Ndura came to power through regicide, meaning let's just say he took a more direct approach to succession planning.
That's a pretty dramatic turn of events. So he's got this ruthless streak, but at the same time, he's embracing the Cwezi doctrine. Was he like a true believer, or was this just a strategic move to kind of consolidate his power?
That's a question that the historians still debate.
Hmm.
While Ndura didn't strictly adhere to the caste system himself, I mean, there are accounts of him promoting people from outside the Bahuma, but he actively spread the Cwezi doctrine of witchcraft far and wide.
So almost using their beliefs as a tool to further his own ambitions.
Exactly. And it was under his rule that Kitara really earned the title of the Cwezi Empire. But there's a fascinating irony here. You see, for all Ndura's efforts to build this Cwezi Empire, the dynasty itself was, well, surprisingly short-lived.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're talking just 2 generations.
2 generations. That's like a blink of an eye in the grand scheme of history.
I know, right?
What happened? Did their own internal power struggles bring them down?
It's more about the ripple effects of such rapid change, The empire fragmented.
Okay.
And with that fragmentation came, well, another power vacuum.
Ah.
And that's where the Bito dynasty enters the scene.
The Bito dynasty. Okay, so they emerged from the chaos left behind by the Cwezi Empire.
Exactly.
Were they able to kind of reunite Kitara, restore it to its former glory?
Not entirely.
Okay.
But their influence was significant. And what's really interesting is that their lineage, it continues to this day.
Really?
Yeah, in 3 of Uganda's current kingdoms.
Wow.
So we're not just talking about, ancient history here, but a direct link to the present.
That's mind-blowing. It makes you realize how these power shifts and cultural changes from centuries ago still resonate today.
Definitely.
But what about the Cwezi themselves? Did they just vanish when their empire fell apart?
Well, their story, it takes another fascinating turn.
Okay.
So while their political power diminished, their beliefs and practices, they continued to have a presence in the region.
Right.
But then European missionaries and colonialists arrived on the scene.
Yeah.
And that's when things really started to shift.
I can only imagine the clash of cultures that must have happened.
Oh, yeah.
The Europeans with their own, belief systems and agendas coming face to face with this ancient cult that had been so deeply embedded in Kitara society.
It was a time of immense upheaval.
Yeah.
The missionaries especially, they actively challenged the Cwezi doctrine, particularly their role in upholding the caste system.
Right.
Which, completely went against their core beliefs.
So you have these 2 very different worldviews colliding. The ancient traditions of the Cwezi and then the doctrines brought by the Europeans.
Right.
What impact did that have on the Cwezi and their beliefs?
Well, it's a complex picture. On the one hand, you have the suppression of certain practices and a push towards conversion.
Okay.
But what's remarkable is that despite these external pressures, elements of Cwezi wizardry, they actually survived.
Really?
Yeah.
So even today, centuries later, there are still traces of this ancient cult in Uganda.
It speaks to the resilience of certain cultural practices.
Yeah.
It's not as overt or as widespread as it once was, but it's woven into the fabric of traditional religious beliefs in some communities.
Yeah.
It's more subtle, but it's there, demonstrating how even in the face of massive societal changes, some traditions manage to adapt and persist.
This has been such an eye-opening journey.
It has.
We've gone from powerful princesses and mystical cults to unexpected power shifts and the enduring legacy of ancient beliefs.
I know, it's amazing.
But I think what stands out to me the most is how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
We often think of history as this linear progression.
Right.
But Kitara's story shows us how these different threads, political power, spiritual beliefs, societal structures, they're all intertwined, influencing each other, shaping the course of events.